hand things over to you. And I got your presentation, so I'm going to pull that up here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk with the group today and present some of our research. I'm very eager to hear comments and questions from the group. I'm sorry for this kind of delayed start. There was a problem with my PowerPoint slides, and so I had to email them to Jenna. Will I be able to advance, or do I need to let you to advance?
Just let me know and I'll advance it.
Oh, right.
There we go.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead and move on to the first one. So how I have organized my presentation today, I put on this agenda, introducing the topic, prior research, some of the gaps that I've seen, some of the challenges to doing this work. As the title said, the focus is on post-secondary vocational education, and I'll talk about kind of how I got involved and interested in that piece. And then much of the presentation will be focused on sharing with you some findings from the study I did with Dr. Heather Tausig at University of Denver, and on post-secondary educational aspirations of young adults with foster care experience. I'm going to briefly talk about the second study that I've done here at BU with my team here, and then have time for discussion, comments, questions, and next steps. Thank you, Jenna. So I won't spend too much on prior research. I value the work of this group has been doing. I'm familiar with some of the research that has come out of this group. I'm on the next slide. Great. So I won't say too much about this. I think we know that post-secondary educational outcomes for young people with care experience are generally poor. I think we have done good research on understanding why that might be. And so we know about placement instability, educational instability, and some of the other things that this group, I'm sure, is quite familiar with. And I think that there has been some excellent and robust research attention, again, many people in this group related to college access and completion, including mentoring and support programs. So all of that is wonderful. What I've focused on is what I see as a limitation, and that is most of the studies have focused on the experiences with four-year colleges and universities. And I think that is a gap. There are other educational options that we might look at. Next slide, please. So a few of the issues, I think, with the focus on four-year college and university is that some young people that I've talked with, that you've talked with, have a preference, strong preference for working sooner rather than later. So they're reluctant to spend a lot of time in college. I think we know many young people struggle with the demands of college and university. And certainly in the US, there's a possibility of incurring plenty of student loan debt and not receiving a degree. So these are some of the risks with four-year college and university. So vocationally oriented post-secondary education is an opportunity for some other potential paths to employment and financial security. Great. Two more slides, and the next one, please. So a few years ago, I'd say about 4 years ago now, I started thinking about this, and I originally was going to write this fine article where I was going to review the literature on higher education outcomes, and I was going to read that literature, and I was going to identify which of the studies looked at vocational outcomes and kind of write what that was. And that never came to pass because I found the literature on this quite murky. And so it certainly helped me, and we eventually got to this article that I've listed here that ended up being more theoretical than empirical, because in reading a lot of the literature, I had a hard time pulling out which of these were post-secondary vocational studies or outcomes. And so I was able to identify some of the challenges. One key challenge is there's a lot of variability in the language that people use when they study this. And so terms like higher education, college, community college, four-year and two-year college, vocational training, post-secondary vocational education, et cetera, are often used. I'm trying to be more specific myself, but I think there's a lot of murkiness in how people are using these terms that made it difficult for me to think about pulling out things focused on vocational education. I also, community college is essential in our field, and I love community college. I'll say that more about that. But it's not always clear when studies refer to college if community colleges are included. And even when they are, community colleges have multiple missions. Some of them are vocational, but some of them also involve transfer to a four-year college, associate degrees, and lifelong learning. So those were two pieces that I was struggling with when I was looking at the literature. There were a few studies, and I've listed them here, that did examine post-secondary education that explicitly focused and provided information on post-secondary vocational education. And those three, they're on the next slide, so I'll mention them. But I'll also say the education and training vouchers, which again, I assume most people are familiar with here. I also tried to get a handle on, those can be used for vocational education and training. I tried to get a handle on how many and what percentage are used, both nationally and in my state of Massachusetts, and could find no information on this. And whenever I asked, people would say that they don't keep track of that. So this ETV study was really interesting to me and tracked some of what percentage of young people are using the ETVs, but again, was primarily focused on college and college education, four-year college, and I couldn't get any information about the vocational, post-secondary vocational training aspects of that. Okay, next slide, please. These are the three studies that I mentioned that when I did this early review did have some specific information about post-secondary vocational education. I think I'll just leave them here given the time. The Jones study is particularly interesting. It's a while now, but he found over time that the percentage of young people formerly in foster care, the percentage attending four-year colleges declined over time, but the percentage studying at two-year colleges and receiving technical training increased. I think that's consistent with what we found in one of our studies, that people may try out four-year colleges, but at a later point in time, find that a two-year college or vocational program would work best for them. The Cal Youth study found that 11% at age 19 were in vocational school. They also have this data about how many, a large percent in community college. And again, some of those in community college might be in vocational programs. So again, one of the things to think about when we're doing this work. The common vocations they identified were nursing assistant and cosmetology. Next slide, please. So in the course of doing this work and trying to understand the literature, I reached out on the listserv, I think it was InTrack, asking people if they had any information about the experiences of former foster youth going to post-secondary education. And Heather at Denver University of Denver reached out to me and said that her data did have some of that information. And so that's how Heather and I came to write this manuscript using data from her study. This data are cross-sectional and come from the fifth wave of a study that she did, which was much broader than focusing on educational and career aspirations. But we used that data and asked the questions, how do young people with foster care experience describe their career and educational goals? And what are their plans for meeting their goals? This study was young adults, 215 of them, aged 18 to 22, who had been in out-of-home care pre-adolescence. They are not just those who aged out. Next slide, please. Here are some of the participant characteristics from the study. About a quarter of the sample aged out. All of them had experience in out-of-home care during adolescence. Next slide. These were the measures, quantitative and qualitative, that we used in the study. So educational aspirations were measured by the question, in the next 3 years, do you plan to do any of the following? Apply to and attend a vocational or trade school, a 2-year or community college, and a 4-year college or university. They could reply to more than yes to more than one of those. And there were 2 open-ended questions that we coded for analysis. The first was, what are your ultimate academic and career goals? Again, these were open-ended, so we coded them into 6 categories. Were those goals primarily vocational in nature, college-oriented, pre-college, such as get my GED or finish high school. That's a pre-career goal. A career path that does not necessarily need further education, primarily work without further education, and some people had kind of no goals. The second qualitative question that we coded was about their plans for achieving their goals. So the first one would be complete prerequisites for further education. Sometimes number two, addressing personal issues such as getting stable housing. A third category was articulating a clear, specific plan for further education and career goal. So something like, I plan to apply to such and such program, complete that in 2 years, and then get a job doing such and such. So that would be an example of a specific plan for a career goal. Another category was stating a general plan with an educational focus, like complete college or something simpler. Number 5 was continue or get work, and some had no plans or don't know, and a few had some other categories. Thank you. Next slide. Here is great. Okay, here is some of the descriptive information about their past past and current educational experiences. So some were currently enrolled in school, some were currently at a high school or GED level, but not many of them. And then there was data about what's the highest level of school completed. As you can see, not a large percentage, only 2% had attended a trade or technical school. But again, it's a little bit uncertain what 1 year of college might mean and if any of that might be vocational. Jenna? This slide is an overview of the qualitative information related to the question, what are your ultimate academic or career goals? Sometimes specific vocations were reported, like cosmetology. Sometimes their answers were more qualitative, like sticking with it and staying out of trouble. Obviously, several mentioned some concrete factors that we know are barriers. Some respondents were not intending to apply to any schooling because their focus was work, and others expressed struggle with any career direction. Next slide. We coded what they had to say into academic and career goals. Like I said, these were the 6 categories. I'll just point out that primarily vocational was 30%, primarily college was slightly higher, 34%, and the other percentages were smaller. So it's roughly even between kind of a vocationally oriented career versus one that needed 4-year college. Next. And these were the types of careers they were articulating. And so you can see how we coded them. Those that were primarily vocational do require education, post-secondary education, sometimes with an associate degree. And you can look at the list there. Many of them would be familiar to you. And then some expressed careers that largely require 4 years or more of college, certainly something like an anesthesiologist, social worker is in there, lawyer, psychologist, etc. So there's a little bit of, it's not always clear, particularly when people say things like nursing. As you know, that you can get nursing degrees at many different levels, but we categorize something like that as 4 years. Certainly law enforcement, you can get a bachelor's in that too, but we kind of looked for information, kind of what is the main career path for these and whether they needed 4-year college or not. And then a few things don't need specific education that are more talent oriented, such as a football player, et cetera, et cetera. There weren't many of those, as you can see. Thank you. Next. The plans for reaching their goals. So we have listed those here slightly across the board. For the most part, 34% kind of a general plan that has an education focus, like enroll in college, finish college, complete college, something like that. Next. We found this interesting. So do you intend to apply or attend in the next, I think it was 3 years? Some have no intent to apply. They're really work focused. They could apply to more than one of these. And so vocational program only is pretty small percent, but many of them are interested in vocational program and something else, and 4-year college, vocational program and a 2-year college and a 4-year college. So I'd be interested in people's thoughts when we get to discussion about what that might mean. I have a couple of thoughts, but I'd be interested in your thoughts as well. And then 2-year college, 4-year college, 2 and 4-year. So those are the intent to apply to different educational programs. And again, just valuing the many people who want to really work. And I love to hear the voices of what people have to say, find a job I don't hate. And that's really important to hear that. Thanks. Next. And if you are struggling to figure out exactly kind of what kind of careers they want, and so I've put some of the quotes here. Next. So I'd like to share with you what we make of some of this, and then I'll talk about the other study that we did as well. First of all, one of the takeaways is the quality description of their career goals identifies several careers that don't need college degrees. And again, this is where we come out that vocational education offers a potential career pathway that is underutilized and requires some more attention. You saw the list of the range of vocational careers that people are discussing or describing or interested in. And I think about the practitioners who are helping young people think about these range of programs. And I think that's one of the challenges because there's so many different things that a young person could be interested in. And nobody has access to all the resources to understand all the potential pathways. So I think that's one of the challenges for this work. Career pathways for some professions are not straightforward. I think this is also a challenge that can involve a combination of credentials. I think particularly the health sector careers, there's so many different kinds of them these days, and at so many different educational levels. I think that can be it's an important sector because there's a lot of job openings there, but I also think that can be challenging to provide guidance exactly to how to go about getting those. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. Oh, sorry, Beck. Vocational education is of interest to the sample, but as I stated, in combination with other educational plans. So trying to understand what that means exactly, I think is something that we need to think about. A young person attending community college or a 4-year university can often enter with general interests and then choose or change their major plan of study when they're enrolled. That's not typically how somebody would enter a post-secondary vocational education, which has a specific career path. So this too has implications for providing guidance for everybody who's involved with young people, providing that guidance, because it might be a little bit more risk to commit to one of those career paths. Because if it's not working out, you kind of have to go back and start at the beginning. It's one of the reasons community colleges are so valuable. I want to reiterate the importance of work to many young people, and valuing youth perspective on this. And in this study and the next study, many young people report flexible and multiple goals. And as we know, the pathways are often interrupted. They're working on multiple things at once. And it's not straightforward. Next slide, please. I'd be interested in people's thoughts about young people and the meaning of college to them. So stated plans for college might occur because young people lack information about careers and their educational requirements. They might be confused. There may be little guidance from adults. There's cultural trends towards over-credentialing. So kind of when young people say they want to go to college, but their stated occupation does not require college, I'm trying to understand what the meaning of that is. And so we write in this article, there may be important non-career related reasons for wanting to go to college and university. And so we list them here. Colleges do more things than just educate. They can be fun. You do meet people. They're not always, they're not always fun. Young people may want to attend because their friends do, because they see college life portrayed in positive ways, because they have absorbed cultural messages about the importance of college, sometimes because the 4-year college is nearby, because it has access to dorm living that can help with housing precarity. So I think qualitative research is particularly needed here to understand when young people are saying about college, even though their career interests are not college oriented, trying to understand what that means. I'd be interested in people's thoughts on that. Next slide. This was the implications for guiding choices. This was an interesting feedback we got from the reviewer on this article that I thought was really helpful. And we responded to it in the revision of the article. And the reviewer pointed out that many young people don't have specific plans and goals. The data that we were using, just like any secondary data analysis, you use the data that you have, which talked about goals and plans. But many young people may more likely frame them as dreams and aspirations rather than concrete plans. I think that's an excellent point. And maybe because of the range of disempowering life circumstances they've had that makes goal setting kind of uncomfortable, or maybe they haven't practiced with it. Goal setting may not be a good fit with some cultural traditions. So what we say then is their dreams and aspirations are also relevant, and that has implications for how we engage with them on these topics, listening and patience, and yeah, just helping them how to move from dreams and aspirations to helping them get started and finish a career path is something that needs more attention and more research attention. Next slide, please. These two implications are not specific actually to the study, but I wanted to get them in here. Community colleges are critical. I think many of you know that. Maybe some of you work in the community college. Judy Havlicek wrote a great article about this that's in my citations. And the campus support programs, which many of you are working in as well, just wonderful research traditions. So how to extend that to all kinds of post-secondary settings is something that's on my mind. Next slide. Just briefly, I want to talk about the second study we've been doing here at BU, the Boston University School of Social Work. And my excellent doctoral student, Shruti Mohanty, is in the audience, and she has helped greatly with this study. But we wanted to collect data about post-secondary vocational education for young people, young adults with prior system experience. We expanded this to child welfare, juvenile justice, and mental health systems who are now enrolled in a post-secondary vocational education program. And in this study, this is a pilot study, so it's small, but what are the decision-making factors, facilitators, and barriers to access and completion? And how do the young people describe the supports they received in pursuing their education and career pathway? Next slide. So what we did is we're in Massachusetts, so we contacted all post-secondary vocational education institutions in Massachusetts. That included all community colleges, but also institutions that were standalone vocational or technical training programs in the state. None of the private ones responded to us at all, which I think is challenging or difficult to study. 4 of the community colleges did so, and all that we asked them was to distribute our flyers. We were seeking respondents. I think young people want to talk with us. I'm not sure what to do about the gatekeepers who don't want to get the information to young people who may want to talk with us. So we were looking for people, the eligibility criteria that was in an educational, post-secondary educational program that was primarily vocational in nature, and had at least had experience with one of the state service systems for at least a year prior to age 18. We did qualitative interviews. We collected some data through a Qualtrics survey, and they received a Visa gift card. Here's some information about the sample description. I point out to you the age was older than we were expecting, but in retrospect makes a lot of sense. And I circled back to the citation I had earlier on Jones's study that followed up with people. And over time, people who were in the child welfare system were drawn more to the community colleges and vocational training than the 4 years. And many of the people that we talked to had started out in some other program earlier in their time period. So it's not unusual, but these are current students in community college and vocational oriented programs. And you can see the age is a little bit older than we sometimes see when we're doing this research. Next slide, please. These were the programs of study that they were involved in. Nursing nursing and medical assistant was the most common, but many of these others are not unusual too. Some technology, cosmetology, we know is common. The earliest start that we asked about their entire educational trajectory. When did they start? And the earliest start was back in 2013. And I think we had two other people who had started before 2020. Again, it speaks to the age of the group, but it speaks to their starting educational programs at one point earlier, and then for whatever reason, not finishing at that time, but now they're in there. And there were 16 total. 9 of the 16 reported some stops or withdrawals somewhere along their educational trajectory, mostly due to having children, financial issues, and work impacts. I think we had 4 people who were parents, but again, they're in current programs. Their children now are school age or older. Next slide. The study was mostly qualitative, but we asked a couple of more quantitative questions. Why they chose the program that they did. Affordability is key. Availability of scholarships and financial assistance, and the career path. I think all of them spoke well about why they chose their career path and how they found it interesting, etc. The only one that really wasn't very important was extracurricular activities. But we didn't quite expect that, but we put it on the list anyway. Next slide, please. We obviously asked a lot of questions about supports that they have. We put some data up there. The supports from the state system, whether it be child welfare, juvenile justice, or mental health. Some positive experiences, some negative experiences, some mixed experience. Here we were mostly focusing on how they supported the vocational interests. And we heard a fair amount about however they were, the people we interviewed were articulating their vocational interests. Sometimes they got pushback from people in the system that wasn't really an appropriate thing to go into. They wouldn't say it exactly like that. That's not quite exactly what they would say, but they didn't feel supported in choosing what they were choosing to do, I think would say. They did mention some family and friends that were supportive, but unable to help them navigate the system. So they did feel kind of on their own many of the times. We did hear, quite frankly, mostly positive things about the community college and or the specific vocational education program that they were in. Really resoundingly so for the most part. And even the negatives were pretty light. Again, I don't know if it's because it was these 4 community colleges that were particularly good at these sorts of things, but it's nice to hear some positive supports that they were getting some positive support from their program. Around the time of the study, I think just prior, Massachusetts passed legislation or started offering free community college, particularly for older students. So many of them mentioned that was a factor for them being in their program now. And as we think about supports, we quoted this author from a different study about the importance of a tapestry of formal and informal supports. So when a young person attends a community college and is receiving helpful information, quick and positive responses, understanding professors, a mentoring program, it's really kind of these multi-level and types of support that may make the difference rather than more individualized supports. Next slide. So we still followed up with the sample at 3 months, and 14 have continued or completed. 1 of them discontinued, and 1 was unknown. Support systems are fluid. I think we kind of know that, but we got some good examples of some of the strengths, some of the positives they saw at time 1, only 3 months later seemed to be a little bit more rocky, particularly in their personal relationships. So we think that such changes are going to be more pronounced over a longer term. So longer follow-up would be really helpful to understand some of this. But I think some of this also speaks to the specific advantages of these post-secondary vocational education programs, which tend to be shorter, have close-knit peer cohorts, and have practical training aligned with the employment goals that many of them speak to. one concluding thought, and then I think I have research implications. But my concluding thought that I do want you to take away, none of this is saying that we should detract from supporting young people to attend four-year colleges and universities. So I don't want to take away the importance of that. For young people who want that experience, that's wonderful, and they should be supported in doing so. The point we are trying to make is that there's a range of options, and kind of helping them understand kind of what their interests are, what the possibilities are, what the fit for them is kind of where we land. So please don't think that I'm anti-college at all. Yeah, I loved college myself. One thing that we're not attending to in this presentation at all is we need attention to quality post-secondary vocational education programs. And I list one study here that identifies, it's a little bit older, but identifies what do we mean by quality post-secondary vocational education. It's a key point. And we haven't addressed that here. I think that is someplace that we needs a lot of attention, because we want people in good programs, obviously. Next slide. Some thoughts on future research. Obviously, longitudinal research is what we need. Intervention research, what many of you are doing. As I said, the field could benefit from greater clarity in the terms that we use. And I'm trying to do that a little bit more myself. I think I've been murky at different points in time, but there's so many different kinds of colleges and so many different post-secondary. What do we mean by that? Higher education. So some clarity on the terms that we're using. I'd like to see some specific, back please, one more. Specific research on some of the, research on some of the specific vocational paths, whether it be the trades, tech, or healthcare, and young people's experiences with these. I think that could be a really fruitful area of research. And I've certainly thought about doing that myself, and I kind of haven't landed on which vocational path would be most fruitful. So anyway, I'd welcome people's thoughts on that. Obviously, we always need more quantitative information. It's weak. I know some of the states do it, the California study, obviously, but not, most states aren't doing it. And the NYTD has very limited data on this. So I know that's expensive. I don't, but those are important studies. And some of the qualitative research that I've alluded to here, the educational pathways chosen, why choices are made, how pathways are attempted, what factors influence the changing to the pathways, what's the role of work and family that intersects with these choices. In the second study, the small study, we had a number of people tell us how their employers were supportive of their going to the educational program that they were in. That's wonderful. I'm sure not all employers are, that many people have difficulty balancing those two, but we were pleased to see that again. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts about the career pathways question, and how we there's so much more that we need to know about the pathways that people are choosing. And young people choose things for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's because what their friends are doing. Sometimes it's because the program is close to where they live. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But we need to understand why that is. Okay, next. That is the end of my formal presentation. I had my main question for the group, how does anything that I say resonate with your research or your practice experience, or does it not? And I think that's the key question. I think we all think about the best ways to guide young people on their educational and career plan. Our next steps, we're continuing to think about the next best research project, always welcome collaborations. And of course, I addressed your questions. Also on the coming slides are our papers that we've done and the references that I've listed here. So I'll end there, and happy to hear people's comments and questions, please.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. Is it helpful for me to end sharing my screen, or would you want that up for the questions
to
refer to any slides?
You can, I don't know. What do you usually do? What's best?
Either way, I can end it and then I can pull it back up again if somebody has a question.
Yeah, I have a hard copy here if I have to refer to something. So
sounds good. And feel free, everybody, to type any questions or comments that you have in the chat, or if you feel like it, you can also come off of mute and ask any questions. There was one comment in the chat. The overall positive feedback about community college could also be due to the sampling approach. The study invited students who are currently enrolled. Students who are unhappy with their experiences in community college may have dropped out or may still be enrolled and not want to be in the study that involves talking about their experiences.
Yes,
Do you have
definitely.
any thoughts on that, Mary?
Yeah, definitely true. I mean, the sampling, this is a pilot study, so the sampling was not rigorous. It does speak to, like I said, we only did a 3-month follow-up, and we saw a bit of negativity encroach in even in the 3 months. So people do drop out. One person did drop out, although that seemed to be more financial. But there were a couple that were really on edge. One who's a professor, she was having a lot of trouble with her professors not being supportive of her, which she did not state at time one. So yeah, that comment is definitely true. Any other thoughts, comments?
I'm happy to jump in with a question and a comment. I'm Jennifer Blakeslee. Hi, lovely to meet you. A lot of the presentation resonated with some of the work I've done or that's been done by my colleagues. And one of the things I wrote down was the meaning of college.
Yeah.
I think that because a lot of what you were talking about resonates with just what I'm hearing from young people in their 20s in general, my nieces
Okay.
and nephews, around this shift in, post-COVID, and different perceptions on the value of college. And I want us to keep exploring as a field what's specific to young people with child welfare exposure and system involvement in general. But I also see this undercurrent of a larger sort of societal thing happening. And then I wanted to ask a bit about intervention, and I didn't hear this mentioned specifically, so I don't know if the young people talked about their exposure to interventions, but I've worked with the I sort of inherited the My Life and the Better Futures models from a mentor, Lori Powers, and our experience with those models was that one-on-one career exploration was really effective, but also it's really hard to do. It takes a lot of time to do that sort of one-on-one approach. And those models took place over a year. And as time has passed since the original development of those models, that is also of less interest to young people to say yes to a 1 year mentoring
Mhm.
program around a particular topic. So it's just making me think of what are those sort of summer or transitional career exploration mentoring programs or similar interventions where you really can dive deep with a young person around their goals and aspirations and dreams, and where you've got a practitioner and an interventionist who knows enough about the local or regional offerings when it comes to voc
Yeah.
programs, because that's, as you pointed out, that's also such a huge problem, I think, is having that expertise as individual providers when it's always changing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know if there was a question in there, but any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, did people talk about mentoring support programs? A wee bit. I did not, I don't recall that I heard them tied to the systems in any way. More the TRIO programs. Um, People did mention mentors. One takeaway, this may have room for exploration, is there was a fair amount of natural mentors mentioned. And that's how people kind of chose their career. So they had bosses. The dental hygienist was a good example of this. She worked in a dental office, not in a filing or whatever. That dentist was kind to her. And she also had experience with, not having good dental care. And that dental dentist, helped her and with her own dental care. So she became in kind of love, wanted to be a dental hygienist, and he still checks in with him as she's gone through that career. So that was one example. One of the kind of nursing type of persons who I think was working as a nursing assistant in a nursing home or elder care facility. They were watching out for her too. Somebody was guiding her. This is your next step for how you, if you want a full nursing degree or whatever. So maybe that's also, maybe we need to do more work with thinking about employers in some of these fields and how we can help them help others in some of these ways. I don't know if that doesn't answer your question either, Jennifer, but they were striking how again, how just people in their lives. And again, and one of the men who was in one of the tech careers, he had stopped some other career. Anyways, he was an example of the boss was supportive of him going to work as well. Yeah, so I'm just finding employers who can be more supportive of people getting on with their lives. Thanks for your comments. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for this comment.
To answer your question about the recording, I'll drop the website into the chat again in case you missed that, so that you can find the recording. Usually within the next week or so, it's posted.
The issue of stopping out that Chris raises, and I know Angelique Day, we have quoted her on this on that phrase as well, is so essential. And so we got, like I said, our sample in the second study was quite old. Many of them stopped out. That's why community colleges are great. I love community colleges. Gives everybody another opportunity. And there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work out the first time. Some of them told us about trying to go to college, particularly after aging out of care, and they were just not ready for it, and kind of dropped out of college. But now they're in this. That student spoke very well about how well things were going now that she found a program that was working for her.
Can I say a comment, ask a question? All right. First of all, thanks for your presentation, Mary. It's good to see you again. Yeah, it was interesting to see. I mean, one of the things I think in general, just heard from a lot of young people is, you're in high school, getting ready to graduate.
Yeah.
There really is a lot of just in the air of, go to college, go to college, go to college. It's a drumbeat. You hear it again and again from caseworkers and so forth. And if you're not really sure what to do, you're on the precipice of possibly aging out. That's one path that you can take. For some young people to go to college as survival, like I need to continue to receive extended foster care. This is a way that to keep me housed. Some of them, it is more like a kind of a more general aspiration, I think, as well. Like I want to go to college without having like a real clear sense of, it's like what it involves or what I want to do. One thing I was thinking about, just Jen, as you were talking, kind of like it would take coordination, but like a lower hanging fruit, not as intensive intervention would for child welfare agencies to have like shadow days. Wouldn't have to be a full paid internship, but just a 1 day. Here's, 15 or 20 different careers that we have partnerships with, coming in for a day to a shadow day to see what it's like. Right now I'm a social work professor. My game plan when I enrolled in college was a sports physical therapist. I did a couple of days at a sports PT clinic. I was like, okay, this is not what I thought. Not what I want to do. It's eye-opening, and I think sometimes you see like a lot of young people saying that they want to become social workers, for example. Well, they have a front row seat to social workers. Some of them are really good, and they that they want to be kind of what they've seen. Some of them really can see themselves doing that, but also just it might also be you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's out there until
Yeah, that's
you get
right.
exposed to
I
that.
agree.
Yeah. And then my one question was actually a question you posed was there's one category about youth's plans that was like vocational plus 2 year and plus 4 year.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on there?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we puzzled over that a lot. I'm wondering if, again, this is secondary data. Maybe young people don't know the kind of the meaning of the term vocational, quite frankly. And again, the language is difficult even in the professional literature. I can't always get a handle on it. So, if one decides they're a social worker, maybe that is a vocation. The priesthood's a vocation. Psychology is a vocation. So they may not. It may not have been explained as kind of more of a technical training sort of opportunity versus four-year college. So maybe they don't understand the question. Maybe they're hedging their bets. Maybe there's a reason to apply to all these others. I think some four-year schools now do offer some vocational training. So maybe it's a four-year college that has a vocational, and they could be uncertain that maybe there is built-in flexibility. So don't really know. But yeah, we found it quite quizzical too. One other comment related to a couple things that you said is we're also, my sense is, who's responsible for this part of the work? And you mentioned kind of the social worker in the child welfare agencies. Well, we know that depending, that's tough. Some agencies don't have those people doing that kind of work. A lot of people talk to us, it's the school's responsibility. Well, it is. So this might be an area that's kind of falling through the cracks because it's kind of everybody's responsibility and therefore nobody's responsibility. And your comment about they don't know what they don't know. We all choose careers based on what we see around us. So I can imagine that's why they choose social worker. They know what a social worker was. My first career plan was to be a police officer because that's what I saw on TV, as a police officer, a teacher, just those really vibrant, physical, visible careers that you see on TV. Anyway, so we all choose, or you go to the community college because it's next door to you without understanding that there might be some other ones. So that's part of the work. But thank you for your comment and question, Nate.
Can I make a comment about the vocational school and the 2-year, 4-year?
Sure. Yeah.
So my name's Jessica. I worked for about 5 years at a campus support program in Texas. And I think part of it is they recognize they can complete a vocational program a little quicker, and it's a way to get income while they're going to school. I had several of my students talk about, getting a nursing assistant or CPA degree, so they have a steady income while they go to school. That income factor was always something in the back of their mind. At least I'll have somewhere to live. At least I'll have a job. So that could be another factor as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Collins, I had a question. And looking at, these different system involved, or like depending on what system you had been involved in, whether it was child welfare, mental health, or juvenile justice, did you see any differences? Like, did people describe any differences in, the ways that they might have been introduced to care? I can just imagine, or introduced to higher education. I imagine that could differ across systems significantly.
I would say from the juvenile justice system, we heard nothing. I don't recall anything for the people who were only involved in that system. So, the persons with child welfare experience, particularly if they were older and they were in the transition years, yeah, they could talk about the services that they received and somebody trying to help them on these things, whether it worked or not. So that definitely. One of the persons involved in the mental health system, she gave a glowing account of a caseworker who's been working with her for years and is still somebody who she goes back to. Obviously, that's a very small sample, but it's always nice when somebody speaks well of one of the service systems. So we're certainly glad she had a good experience. So we'd say overall, I'd say child welfare was the service system that provided the most. Just looking at the comments. Yeah, thank you for that comment, Rebecca. That's very helpful.
Any final comments or questions? Probably have time for one more if somebody has something that they wanted to ask. Well, I appreciate you all being here today. And Dr. Collins, I appreciate you presenting your work today. I hope to see you all in future webinars, and I hope you all have a great day.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.